I know that you have. You said you had a son that just had a birthday, right? You have two kids. I
Yeah.
think. Remind me of the ages now.
Yeah. So now the youngest is just over a year. He's 14 months, and that's Jonathan. And Steven just turned 3. So he's like 3 and 1 week.
Okay, I was thinking about this not over the weekend, but I think over the past week. You mentioned that um, the your son was turning the next age, and I was thinking to myself, I said, you know what? I've got a 12-year-old. I never in my life would have imagined that I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old,
Hmm.
right? I always saw those people and it's like, man, your kids, I was always on the other side of that. And now I'm on, the side where I've got the older kids, you've got the younger kids. And I hear you mentioning some stuff about like, the kids every now and then they'll, be in this phase. And I was like, yeah, I remember that. I'm so glad we got past it. But I think what this means for me, what I've been thinking about is for me that this is a great time to like be starting a business. Now the market says it's a terrible time potentially, but
Right.
um but personally this is a great time to be starting a business, because we've talked about this before and we'll talk about it again is that family is a huge driving factor in a business. And you might say, well, it should be maybe money or whatever, but the idea is that by having our own business, by doing our own thing, then we can control our time
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and we can give back more of our time to our families, right? To my 12-year-old and my 7-year-old, and for your 3 and 14-month old, right? And and that's super important, right? For me, and I know for you as well. It's not really financially driven. It's it's time driven, right? It's freedom. It's
Right.
it's the freedom that we're looking for. And so just to kind of kick off, right, this next season, this next set of episodes with the idea that this is our time. This is a great time for us to build a business. And that's what we're going to be focusing on for the next, I don't know, weeks, months, years, hopefully.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. And I want to tack on something there, Ram, because I saw a mutual friend of ours comment on this on a similar topic just recently. I was like scrolling LinkedIn this morning or something while I was waiting for my coffee, and I saw like there was a post on LinkedIn and where they were talking about like what to do with people that are late, like. And somebody
Yeah,
responded, and
I
they were
saw it.
like, "Okay, you saw what I was talking about." And one of our mutual friends responded, and they were like, "I don't even know why we focus on late so much, because oftentimes what we're essentially saying is that like somebody else had a competing priority, and they explicitly called out that often that competing priority is family. And like if we can't like, and so what we're basically saying is like we want them to have the same priorities as us, but really that's not like, well, if we have the same priorities, like you and I have the same priorities, right? We both put family first, but I don't put like, I mean, just transparently, I don't put your family first. I put my family first, right?
Exactly.
And you put your family first. And so of course we're gonna have competing priorities, and we have to build a business that enables that. I just thought that was such a profound point, especially as somebody that's on the receiving end of that quite often, where like, breakfast time will run long. Or yesterday, I missed a complete meeting because morning drop off took longer than expected. And like, so I am the person that post might often be talking about, that I'm late or I'll drop off a meeting or something because something's happening at home. And my priorities for me are clear. Like if something's happening at home, and you've been on the receiving end of that, even sometimes, oh man, I got to drop, like a toddler wanders into the office, and so I'm going to play with him because who knows what's going on. Um, but like knowing that that's like at the core of it, and knowing that that's our priority set, that we are growing something so that we can like focus on our families, and that means that mine and your priorities aren't necessarily strictly aligned, right? Because like it's not, we're focused on the same group of people, we have the same principles and the same goals in mind. um and building something to both enable that, but also something that keeps that in mind as we grow.
Yeah, I loved the post and the comment because what it did was it made me recall a couple things. Was one, I used to very much be the person that was, you come from a strong military background, and I don't mean
Yeah.
like I've been in the military for 100 years. What I mean is when you join, if you're not already one of those persons that's on time, hopefully you become one of those persons that you're like, if you're not early, you're late kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's absolutely great for that line of work. But when you're building a company and you're hoping to establish, you know, um, not only patterns, but like a culture. And I hate to use the word culture really. I think sometimes it leans the wrong way. But the things that are important are no longer that you're in the office or in the desk or in front of the screen by 8 a.m. Right? Like
Right.
that's the thing that I grew up with, and stuck with me for many years. Was I was very much like I have to be early,
Hmm.
and I'm going to be the person that's in the office. And when people come in, basically I'm the first one there, and it was just like drilled into me, kind of thing. And when I was at USA, I remember a couple of folks you would see, they would come in like at 10 o'clock,
Hmm.
right? And because the mental model is the 8 o'clock start time or 9 to 5 kind of thing that's been drilled into us for so many years, you automatically think that person is late, right?
Yeah.
But that's not really the truth, because maybe they're not on the 8 to 5 or 9 to 5. And maybe, again, going back to the whole debate of the 40 hours, maybe we don't even need to work 40 hours. And truthfully, we've here, this thing that we're building, 100% agree that 40
Yeah.
hours is not what we're striving for, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to like being late kind of thing, or that whole idea, I think being late is just it's relative. The only thing that I really care about, the only thing that I really care about at all is if you have a meeting and you need to miss, just let someone know and then we'll reschedule it,
Yeah.
right? The thing that would be the most frustrating is if you have a meeting and you're waiting for someone and they don't tell you that they're not showing up, right? For whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um, so back to the post, back to the comment. Absolutely agree. We should be prioritizing our families first. And I'm not, when I say we, I mean like people in general.
Right.
But the truth is, a lot of times business, the company gets prioritized. And, especially with the current market, everybody's, there's lots of layoffs. So people are thinking, hey, I've got to like, be available all the time for this company,
Yeah.
because, I don't want to be in the next round of cuts or whatever it is. And so, definitely here, as we continue to add more folks eventually, and even with me and you, I was thinking about this. I keep saying I was thinking about this because I think about so much stuff,
Well,
but
and we should be clear for the audience, like what you and I mean, the nature of our work is we've talked a few times on the phone and stuff, but we've kind of had, when in this off season, like we ended season one and now we're moving into season two, we didn't really have these kinds of conversations in that gap. Like, so like there's probably a lot of things that you've been thinking about that I've been thinking about that
yep,
are going to pour into as we're starting to like lean back into growing and building the business, which is something I want to talk about a little more in a second, but go ahead. Sorry. I just wanted to give you affirm that like it's okay to say I've been thinking about this because we haven't chatted
yeah,
in a minute.
yeah. So another part of that was that we don't meet together that often. On one of our last podcasts, we talked about stand-ups, right, and
Hmm.
meetings, and how often you should meet, that kind of thing. And in truth, we don't meet that often, right? A
Hmm.
lot of our stuff is asynchronous. We're using Discord, and it doesn't really matter what medium we use to communicate. But the idea is that we don't necessarily set up more meetings than that are necessary. The idea is to get as much work done asynchronously as possible. GitLab is right one of the big like innovators in that space, right? They basically were remote first from the get go, and they have like this
Hmm.
big old manifesto. But if we can adapt those things and not get into the pattern of just setting meetings for meetings, um, then when something comes up in somebody's life, they don't have to notify 100 people that they're going to be out, because there's no meeting to begin with, right?
Right.
We
There's
only
no
meet when we
out,
need
there's
to.
no in really. There's
Exactly.
just work. And so yeah, I did want to affirm that. But I want to ask you, Ram, because we are wanting to focus this quarter on growing Anvil, and be I think this is an important thing for us to actually call out, because what I want to be clear on is like what we're probably not focused on this quarter is growing income through Anvil. We talked about this a little bit, that we want to like we're not looking to like take on any huge extra work at the moment because we're leaning into a holiday season and we want to be able to spend that time with our families and not like grinding out a contract or something. So like if that's not the case, if what we're not growing is profits and stuff like that, what does it mean to actually grow a business in this case?
Yeah, I absolutely love this question, because I think for most people, it's how do they generate income,
Right.
right? How
Right.
they generate revenue. And for us, based on the thing that we're trying to build, it's about getting people involved. getting to work with more people. So we talked about last time that Lewis started working with us. He's been doing quite a bit of work.
Yep.
And the idea is that if we can get more people involved, so I'm a huge believer in like we go together as a team. You've talked about this before, the fundamental, unit of engineering as a team. And not even from just like an engineering perspective, but like if you're gonna go take a hill, so think back like, to the military metaphor, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna take a hill, do you want to take the hill by yourself or do you want to take the hill with your squad?
I
Right?
mean,
You
of
want
course
to
you
take
want to
the
go
hill.
with, yeah.
Exactly, right? So it doesn't matter if your squad is 3 people or 10 people. The more people you have involved, those people are going to be cheering you on. You're going to be working together as a team.
Hmm.
And so, even if the only reward when you get to the top of that hill is that you all made it together, right? There's nothing financial, there's no pot of gold sitting on the top of the hill, but you just all got there together, right? Nobody left behind, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's enough. And that's I think some of the first set of rewards that we're looking for. Sure, we want to we want Anvil to make money someday. We want to be profitable. We want this to be our full-time gig someday. But to get there, I think there's a huge benefit in bringing people on early, that kind of thing, and then bringing people like with us and being part of
Yeah.
that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it leans into some of the reasons that, we started doing this to begin with, not just to focus on our family, but also because we've both found that we have a strong interest and passion in bringing people in that are new to the industry and working with them as they grow. And so like I think that's a good one. I also I want to say that like we definitely want to deepen like what's in our infrastructure and like grow our capability, I think, is at the general level. So like growing our automation and growing the number of people that can work with us, and spinning out some fun projects through that, some fun opportunities, or like we still have rubber duck sitting out there, and I have a couple of things that I'm hoping to lean into it this quarter. But that's what I think of as well. Is like when I think about growing, I think about growing our capability to deliver, and growing our team, like to make sure that we have people to celebrate on this journey with.
Right. And part of growing the team is making sure that people can, I hate using the term like be productive quick or hit the ground running. It's a term that a lot of people use when you're hiring someone. Hey, we want somebody to hit the ground running, kind of thing.
And it
Uh,
means that has such a strong like implication, I think, to us that we're reticent to say it because of what it's meant in our experience, not necessarily what it means like in the abstract.
right.
Um,
Yeah. For us, it simply means that there's no red tape, that there's no that we limit the amount of noise or the amount of overhead and the amount of effort it takes to spin up a new code base, right? So we know this. You joined your company, not too long ago, and I know you can recall. You don't have to, but you can think back and think about how long it took you to get your workspace set
mhm,
up. Think about
mhm.
all the little nuances along the way that either were documented or weren't documented, and you had to document them. For the next person, maybe things changed, right? And and things didn't go so smoothly, right? So it wasn't necessarily about, again, for me, it's not necessarily about how quickly can somebody push code. I don't really care about that. It's how quickly can somebody, integrate themselves into the code base, right? How quickly can this environment be up and running for them with next to no headache,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what we care about is
Yeah.
overhead and ergonomics. We care about um, just making, and you mentioned like doing fun projects. Another part is this is like I think code should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I know I'm not the only one here, but the truth is code is not always fun, and it's not always fun for lots of reasons. But coming back here is that one of the things that I'm looking for is simply that we can have fun doing, building this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's some of the diversity of the stuff that we have lined up. I mean, I'm not gonna like pull the curtain back just yet, but you were showing me something right at the start of this call that is definitely off the beaten path for us and is very fun. So we're definitely gonna have some opportunities there, which is really cool. So like with us, what I hear from all that, Ram, is that we have a couple of objectives in this quarter, which is going to be a shorter quarter. First of all, we said that we were going to start a little earlier than we did, and that's a-okay. We both had stuff going on for the last week or two that kept us from coming back, and that's exactly where we started this call. Is that's what we should be doing, but we have a shorter quarter and what we want to accomplish right now. And you mentioned, I think the key thing is enabling folks to come on board. And I really like this word enabling. I think about it a lot, because like when you're talking about somebody coming into the code base, we don't want them to deliver code fast necessarily. We don't want to be like, yeah, get in that code base and push your first like commit the first day and get something to production. But I've always sort of been attracted to that idea, but not because like I don't want to introduce somebody to the grind and it just becomes a grind, right? But what I do want to do is I want to enable them to be able to move at their pace. Like you mentioned code base stand up. And I think this is so important because with that onboarding, just that, like setting up your workspace, getting set up, is the first introduction of what I think of as the concrete culture of an organization. And that is, how focused is the organization on getting out of your way? And optimizing for autonomy and managing for autonomy. Because like when I get that code base, first of all, the number of like steps that I have to go through to do it, especially steps that aren't like sort of standard, tells me exactly sort of the process or like mental model overhead of the organization. And then if there are all of these like processes where I've got to get access to this and I've got to get access to that, that starts to tell me a lot about how the organization is segmented. And it really is your first opportunity to come into the concrete culture of an organization. And I think what we're talking about when we say hit the ground running is we want to be a team that gets out of each other's way, that we are there to enable and support and grow, but not to get in your way. And like to win together, and so I think that's a big part of what we have to do. Shout out no end files, because that's an important part of this, like just kill them. And we've already seen some success with that. Of course, Lewis is busy building a thing that we're not ready to talk about yet, but when we do, we have to. But that was one of our early conversations with him, is helping him shift that mindset away from like, let me have this thing that now we have to share through an alternative medium. And how do we get out of that habit without compromising the platform? And so that's definitely on the agenda this quarter. Of course, like an actual onboarding, you mentioned Discord. How do we get people into the Discord? How do we get them onto the board? How do we get them into the repos? Like really trying to, this is that great example of concrete culture, right? Is in an organization, and you've experienced this with startups, is like you get on and you have to get access to the repos, and then you have to get access to the Slack, and you have to get your email set up, but it's not magical. And it's not magical. And also like it gets left behind. Like I remember working in an organization and there were people that had left the organization, a long time before, but they still were kind of in the code base, not just because somebody forgot to remove them from the repo. And so a lot of what I'll be focusing on this quarter, I think, is making that magical experience to where you come on and you're on, and you can opt into working on projects. Now, it may not be 100% there at the end of the quarter because we are going to be shorter, but that's the part that I'll definitely be focusing on.
Yeah. So on the note of like, bringing folks on, that I talk to a couple of folks regularly, or just, have like a random conversation on LinkedIn, etc. But, there's so many folks out there like wanting to do something different. And, they want to, have fun writing code. They want to build their portfolio. They want to build their resume, that kind of thing. What I really like about what we're doing is that anybody that is going to join us to write some, to help us build these features out and these capabilities, they're going to have an opportunity to work on all the things, including the infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like when you join a team, a lot of times they'll say, this is what you're going to work on. Like if you're an individual contributor, right? So early career developer, maybe mid-level, you don't have a lot of control over anything. This is what we need you to work on. And that's the only thing you work on. And you might get sick of it really quick. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm sick of working on this thing for a number of reasons. But what's really cool is the way we're building things. and the way that our board is laid out, and the way that our board is going to be laid out, right? And the hundreds of ideas that we have that are just sitting in either a physical backlog or like a mental backlog.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's really cool about that is it feels like a consulting agency, right? It feels like I can go work on this for a couple weeks or even a week or a day. And I can say, oh, there's this other really cool thing over here that I want to go work on and solve that problem. And then I can do some tickets for that. And then I can come back and do some tickets for something else. And it you don't feel stuck, right? That because that's one of the biggest things for how I feel like when I'm working for a company, is that you're basically stuck in you're stuck in this role, right?
Yeah.
Until you can change it. But when you join a company at the very beginning, you're at the mercy of of your manager, of like the tech lead kind of thing, because you're the newest person there, right?
Yeah.
There's like this ladder, whether you like it or not, and you're at the bottom of the ladder. So those are some of the things that I'm really excited about. You know, again, before this started, I was showing you something else that I basically reskinned or started to rebuild from years and years ago.
Yeah. It's
I'm
like your
excited about that.
propeller.
It's like my propeller. I'm excited
Yeah.
about that. And the cool thing is, right, this is what is so exciting about this is that I can release this thing. My goal is to release it this weekend, may or may not happen, get busy with the kids and family and stuff. But let's say it's so small that I can build it and release like an initial version this weekend. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
And then and then you could simply say, "Hey, there's a cool feature I want to add." And guess what? I can get out of your way. I don't have to tell you how to add the feature. I don't have to tell you what what you should do or don't do it. Or you might look at my code and say, "Hey, Ram, this is great. It works, but we need to adjust this." And I'm gonna say, "Go for it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Make it
Exactly.
better, do it." And I say that because I had a conversation with the dev that so I interviewed this guy for one of the companies I left a couple months ago, and things didn't work out. And this was one of the themes that came up, was that he was trying to make things better based on his experience. And the guy's pretty sharp. He knew what he was talking
Mm-hmm.
about. I remember going through the interview, and the guy was like really sharp, knew his stuff, but at the same time, his experience wasn't really the thing that they were valuing. They just wanted him to write the code the way they wanted it written. Basically, I'm gonna use the term, they're throwing spaghetti on top of spaghetti.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of felt like, oh, I hated doing this to the guy. Like I was interviewing him for a job that I was leaving,
Yeah.
basically. And when I found out that he wasn't there anymore, I reached out to him and we had a great conversation. The guy's a great dev. And ultimately, I'm like, I would love for this guy to come work with us, right?
Cool.
Because when you spot talent, and you're like, this guy's got some abilities here, right? And he's also like a personable person, you meaning humble. He's not the rock star, I'm gonna solve all the problems, get out of my way kind of thing. You want to work with them. And so, we've talked about like bringing people on at every company that I've been at, including USA. I have this mental list of people that I want to work with again.
Yeah.
And I know you
Yeah.
do too.
It's funny. I have a friend, and I think we'll have to wrap soon. But I have this friend of mine that gave me this idea way back in college that I've sort of like grown up with, and he was the highest compliment that this guy could give you is, "I have you in my cul-de-sac," and what he meant by that was like if I could build my own little neighborhood, like you would be one of the people in my cul-de-sac. Like you would live with me and we could like live near each other and basically grow our lives together. And like there's sort of a business proxy to that, right? Like I have you in my huddle or you're on my team. And there are absolutely people that like, going from company to company and working with different people everywhere that I'm like, yeah, I just want to build fun things with you. Like, I mean, to be really transparent, that's how we got started, right? Is like we worked together at USA, and I was like, I like working with you. You have great personality, like you're smart and like you're good at what you do, and you're passionate about like the things that matter and like not paying attention to the things that don't. And so like when I moved on, I was like, oh, let's bring Ram with me. And since then, we've kind of shifted ways, but we found ways to continue to work together. And that's exactly what we want, right? Like, is we want that team. We want that team. And so that's what we'll focus on building this quarter for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how many we can bring on before the end of the year.
Yeah, I think how many is definitely the question that you and I will maybe have to have at some point, because I know you've got a quite a log of folks that I hear from you very frequently. So it'll be cool to see.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what this year brings. And then, I know we've got a wrap here, but I've already started to think about some goals and some targets for next year.
Yeah, well, and that's good because, like, I mean, we talk about growing right now in terms of like not profitability, not funding, but I think as we look into the next year, I mean, that's a definitive part of the conversation. And so, yeah, well, so whatever we're doing now has to be uh, tuned in to that's what the future has to be.
100%. Hey, well, this was fun.
Yeah, it was good to catch up again, Ram, and thanks so much for spending a little bit of time on a Friday morning with me. And hope you have a great day.